Hey there, fellow creators. Ben here from Cinder Studios, and I'm a big advocate for telling people they should probably do some kind of a sketch before they start a painting. But you know, not all sketches are done with pencils or pens. Sometimes you need something a little bit more powerful and a little bit wider. So today we're going to be sketching with watercolor. Stick around. So I'm currently working on this new painting of this cliffside city and lighthouse kind of thing going on. But this painting didn't necessarily start like a lot of my other sketches do. This one started with a watercolor sketch. And if you guys follow my vlogs, you would have seen this by now already. But I wanted to break down this process a little bit more for you guys and show you how I approach a watercolor sketch for a piece. So down here in front of me today, I have laid out a whole bunch of little pieces of 140 cold pressed watercolor paper, 140 pound, excuse me, and tape that down to a nice piece of board for security. And on all of these, we're going to be going through sort of my process in making all of these different little sketches. Okay, so down here in front of me, as I just mentioned, are a bunch of scraps of watercolor paper. I cut these down out of a larger sheet of the Canson XL 140 pound. A lot of people don't like that paper, but because it's kind of really cheap, but I enjoy it because it's really good for practice stuff like this. So for this, you want to pick usually just one color of watercolor, and I actually like to use black for this. A lot of people don't like black watercolor in general, primarily because it tends to be a little bit more opaque of a watercolor. But for something like this, it's really, really useful. If you don't happen to have a black watercolor, just some India ink works just fine as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just squeeze a little bead of that down out onto my palette. And as I mentioned again at the top of this, that you want to use sort of like the biggest watercolor brush you have. This little angle one happens to be my biggest, well, angle. I also have this round, which I'm going to be using as well. But between these two, that's all you really need. And of course, it's watercolor, so you need, a little bit of water reservoir here too. So in many ways, I'm treating these fairly similar to how I would treat just my regular sketchbook sketches, which is somewhat more non-objective. I don't have a ton of real solid concrete ideas. I'm going to find different shapes just by using the shape of the brush itself. So I'm going to start out by loading up sort of a first lighter, washier color of that black. Keep it a little bit thinner. And then I'll go in for another darker layer a little bit later as well. And I'm just kind of wiggling my hand using the shape of the brush to find different things. So I might think, maybe mountain, maybe waterfall, really vague ideas like that. But generally, I'm just kind of playing. So using that brush just to kind of figure out different shapes. And just kind of scribble with it. And then as my mind starts to find things, I can, well, find things. A little archway and a path here. That's actually too much black. I need to thin that down a little bit. I'm going to another one. Keep this more vertical. Yeah, see that's much more of the color that I'm looking for here. That gray. And I'm just, playing. That's all this really is. Just little bits of things here and there to try and free up your mind and figure out, where you might want different things. And since I'm, a landscaper, all of these are gonna feel landscapey, of course. And now once you've done sort of that gray layer, you can get a little bit more paint and then essentially come in for a second pass and make, bolder, more interesting shapes in that sense of doing, essentially like background, foreground kind of stuff. Probably should have waited till that one dried a little bit more, but that's all right. Something like that. And this one's going to be more this way. Just finding out where you might want things, where things live, all that stuff. I'm going to switch brushes to that round one to get some different shapes here in a minute. Alright, let's swap for the round brush. And if you've seen my video on different types of brushwork and different shapes and different things you can make, of course that's more for oil and acrylic, but some of the same techniques still apply. So finding things within the brush itself, with whatever you can do with that paint. And picking just one solid dark color really forces you to think in things like positive and negative space, which is the exact same thing I do in my sketchbook with ink. Of course, you know, this side, in this case, we're just scaling those thumbnails up quite considerably. And I don't know what all these things are, but that's half the fun of this, is, you know, finding new ideas and new ideas. That's really all there is to it. It's just, you know, letting yourself play a little bit. And that's one of the best parts about art in general, is you can really just allow yourself to play a little bit and find different shapes, find different ideas, and see where just the stroke of the brush or the movement of the paint leads you. All right, what do I want to do for this one? Let's think of something a little more sprawling open world over here. Something like that. And of course, if you have, you know, more distinct ideas, again, this can be a great way to help build those out a little bit more without worrying about detail. And there's so much, especially in the sketching process, that you kind of get caught up in the sort of the detail phase a little bit too much sometimes, and it can really force you to, or rather, it forces you, sort of backs yourself into a corner. I guess is kind of how I'm trying to say this. And doing something like this that is more freeform, that lighter exercise, frees your mind up, frees your hand up, and whether this be, you know, finding your next painting, or if you just need some sort of a quick practice, this is a fantastic little exercise for this. Granted, of course, it's somewhat more wasteful to do this with watercolor than it is with just, you know, quick, simple sketch paper. But again, if you're kind of stuck in a rut, which I kind of have been lately myself artistically, this is a fantastic little exercise to, again, free your mind, free your hand, and force yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. And this is also why I would say where tube watercolors are extraordinarily valuable, because if you're using pans, you're probably not using a big brush like this. You won't even be able to soak that much paint into your bristles. And this, again, this works with India ink. This works with pretty much any liquid medium. You can use just regular paint, you know, regular acrylic or oil paint for this as well. But you'll see why in a minute why I'm choosing to do this with watercolors. Okay, so I'm going to give these a couple minutes to dry, peel the tape off, and then we're going to do a little bit more finessing with them and find perhaps a little bit more than just the shapes here. Okay, these are mostly dry. This one needs a little bit more time, but the rest of these we can worry about now. So at this point, it is, you can just stop here. As always, this is, as far as the watercolor sketch part of this demo, that's over. You can use these as bases for your paintings if you want to. Or you can take it a step further, and now we can bring in the much thinner media. So I grabbed myself just a basic sketch pen, as well as a white colored pencil. specifically white because we used black, and this will allow us to expand any of the details of the black watercolor with the ink, as well as add some overlaying white details with the pencil. For the sake of overall sanity, as nice as this little spread looks, I do have to move these off to the side so I can just work on one at a time and not be distracted by all of these other things. So I will say that during the initial painting of all of these, I wasn't super confident, but now seeing them all dry and side by side, I've got some ideas flowing for sure. So I think I'll start just with, not this one. Actually, this is actually still a little bit wet. I'm going to set that aside. Let's start with this one instead. So there's a lot going on here already. I've got these nice big arches and things like that. There's not really a ton of like real distant background stuff. So in theory, I could put a little bit more into that that way. So, you know, maybe add a little, to help if the pen was working. Just a little light mountain in the back. Something else to offset this. A little bit there, put a horizon back there. And when maybe that comes further out, drop in a couple little figures. The light, I like the idea of the light coming maybe from the upper left. And then, of course, you know, if you want to define those shapes out a little bit more, you certainly can. If you're more of a portrait artist, this can be a great way to, you know, put down, like, you know, the splashes of value and then find faces within that. I'm obviously not a portrait artist, so I'm not even going to remotely attempt to do that. But again, just a little bit of extra finesse to find a bit more shape-wise in whatever you happen to be working on. And you don't have to go overboard, you know, just a little something is nice. But also depends on, you know, the different shapes and things that you'll find within that sketch. And exactly where you want to find all of the other shapes and all of the other details. And like any given sketch, nothing is set in stone. By the time you take it to canvas, it could be something very, very different than what it looks like now. I will say that about this other recent one that I did. This is somewhat similar, but this was for my my recent painting, Revenant Embers, which if you guys have been following the vlogs, you will have seen that. For the most part, the background's the same, but pretty much all of the foreground is entirely different than what that painting became. So a sketch is not about, you know, making decisions that can't be changed. It's just there to give yourself a little bit of a starting idea as to what you want to do with any given piece. Yeah, that one's not too bad. I like that. See, now this one's got a lot more positive space here, so I'll probably be utilizing the colored pencil a bit more. I like the idea of this being much more of an open field, something even like that. Maybe there's, you know, a little bit more to this, a little bit less. I'm not really sure. It's kind of light coming from both sides here, but I like maybe this side in the middle is where everything's kind of coming in at. This is why I like using a colored pencil for this, because again, any kind of pencil you can, you know, lay on its side a bit more and get a much wider stroke with. Again, not worrying about a ton about detail, but just getting that value. You know, work our, so we have light maybe coming down that way, and then that edge of a mountain coming this side. Edge of a cliff kind of deal. Indications of that being more in shadow than this. And the figures. Yeah, so that's a little bit, you know, a little different than the other one. And that's really all it takes to to mess with the watercolor sketch like this. You've got, you know, I really want to play with this one, because this definitely has more of the look of a tree, so I can find more defined shapes within this. And watercolor sketching, again, is a fantastic way to free up your mind, free up your hand, and get you to start thinking about shapes beyond what you kind of see naturally. There's a very distinct kind of rut you can get yourself into just by doing the same kind of work over and over and over again. And once you free your mind up a little bit to do something that, you know, maybe is a bit more freeform like this, you can really start to find all kind of really crazy ideas from just within that one little exercise. And of course it is 100% all up to you exactly how far you decide to take these sketches. You know, if it turns out that you really like how this is turning out, you know, clean it up a little bit more, frame it, turn it into a actual little completed mixed media piece if you so desire. You never know what can come out of different little drawings and exercises and things like that. And once again, this is just a really great little tool to be able to utilize in any capacity of trying to find ideas and find new paths, new worlds, new things to explore in your creative journey. And I really hope you guys can give this one a try. So that's just a quick look at how I make these little watercolor sketches when I need to free up my mind and reinvigorate my creative energy. It's projects like these that remind me why I love doing more mixed media stuff. The ability to start with something like watercolor, go to ink and colored pencil, and just find all of these different ideas just through the nature of the materials themselves. I really enjoy this myself, and it's one of the reasons why I advocate for, regardless of whatever medium you say is your choice medium, acrylic, oil, watercolor, what have you, to try and use as many things as you can get your hands on, because when you experiment in other media, it can help better inform how you use the one that you choose to use on a regular basis. Having a wide range of experiences and skill sets in art can help you become a better artist in ways that you could never imagine. So if you learned something in this video or just enjoyed watching me paint, go ahead and hit that like button. Let me know your thoughts on this process in the comments below, as well as if you decide to try it for yourself. Get subscribed if you're not already. Check me out in links, social links, and other links in the description box below. And this has been reminding you to keep on creating, stay inspired, and I will see you guys next time.